As we continue with our top five in the West, we go to number two, the New Orleans Pelicans, who just lost last night to the Memphis Grizzlies. But they've been one of the more impressive teams on the season at 23-13, 5-5 in the last 10, of course. But this is a team that has battled through injuries to their top guys in terms of CJ McCollum. Brandon Ingram's out with a big toe injury, I believe, right now. He had a concussion earlier in the season. Zion Williamson has been out, but he's been healthier than the other guys there and has been paying dividends for this team so far this season. Willie Green has done a fantastic job, especially with this team, especially on the defensive end, which was the surprising fact of this team. But you just look at this team top to bottom. They have the veteran in CJ McCollum. They have Brandon Ingram as a scorer. Hopefully he can come back and continue to produce for this team. Zion Williamson has been the prayers answered for this team they have been waiting to be healthy for a long time now, and he's playing at a high level, looks to be in shape, giving effort on the defensive end. You look at the other guys like Herb Jones and Trey Murphy III. I'll get into those guys in a little bit, but we look at this team overall, looking at their points per game, 118 points per game, and they're able to score in various different ways, shooting the three, and Zion being so efficient, able to get inside, score inside. Herb Jones is able to knock down a three. This team is very dynamic on both sides of the basketball, and you wouldn't think that. I always thought there would have been a question of the weakness in defense, especially last year. I said that a lot. I didn't think they had the defense last year, but this year they seem to have turned it around. But 118 points per game on that side, sixth in offensive rating on the season. Defense 13th in the points per game, but their defensive rating is sixth in the league. So you're looking at what this team is able to do on both sides of the ball, and it's one of the more dynamic teams in the league, top to bottom. Look at the various guys, but let's start with the guys at their starting. Zion Williamson, 26.2 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 4.6 assists a game. You really can't do anything with him on the offensive end. He's just so efficient to get to the basket and finish around the rim. Even adding a little bit of the three. He was able to knock down a three a couple nights ago and be dynamic. He had a tough going last night in Memphis, but it's usually tough to keep Zion from the paint, off the boards, attacking, finishing at the rim. It's very difficult to do that. He's able to play make and able to pass out and make various passes with his skill set, and it just gives you a different dynamic. He's like a bull out there. D'Angelo Russell a couple nights ago said he's playing football, we're playing basketball, similar to kind of how Giannis is. And that's basically just saying, hey, we can't deal with the physicality. It's kind of like when people said with Shaq in the 2000s and in the early 90s, he's so physical that he's basically opposing his will with every step on the court. And you see that in his play when he's able to glide and go coast to coast, which is very impressive, and able to finish at the rim, able to move guys out the way, able to spin his way into the lane and finish at the basket. It's very tough, and he gives that second effort, of course, on the glass as well. CJ McCollum at 20.1 points per game, 6.1 assists. And he's been providing that veteran leadership, able to knock down 10 threes a game, basically telling these guys, hey, you guys be you. You guys be you in Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. I'll find my way to get my buckets and make an impact. And basically letting these young guys lead the team, but able to step in at times and take over games, as we saw. He had 10 threes the other night there. I think he had 41 points on the night. But just that veteran leadership that seemed to be missing with this team overall. They were a young team. Stan Van Gundy was the coach, trying to find a way to navigate his voice. They have a veteran leadership now with the CJ McCollum coming in there and being that guy that can be like, hey, I've been to the playoffs. I've been in deep playoff runs. I've been in big-time games. This is how you do it, and basically kind of coaching this team on the court as they go. But his ability, I'm very impressed with him, very happy for him, especially when he was playing next to Dame. He was able to find his buckets there. But to see him in this different role, basically kind of as that veteran leader, kind of as that main point guard for this team, you're seeing it rub off on the other guys. And it's just awesome to see CJ kind of navigate, kind of mentor these guys to a change in this whole franchise, a winning franchise that has been struggling for a while, and to see him get that on the come up is good. Jonas Valanciunas has played 35 games, all the games this season for the Pelicans, 13.7 points per game and 9.4 rebounds, on the season. And he's been a physical presence on the inside, basically being that offensive bruiser that they desperately need, kind of like a Nurkic in Portland. Very dynamic in his own right. And this team, looking at it, I didn't mention Brandon Ingram there. I don't have his stats there because he's injured right now. and has been out for a while, it seems like, with a big toe injury, but he's able to play, make, and score and be that dynamic. So it's only to see this team play like this without him is going to be interesting to see when he comes back. Of course, there's going to be a little stumbling blocks implementing him back into it, getting him back into game shape. But in terms of what this team is, and especially their top guys are for this team, they're so dynamic and able to score that they can score with anybody in the league. They put pressure on anybody from various positions on the court. And to have Brandon Ingram not even returned yet is very, very interesting to see when he comes back and see what impact he's able to provide next to CJ McCollum, next to Zion Williamson, and Valanciunas, of course. Moving on, we're going to Trey Murphy, their draft pick there, that has been playing really, really well. He's 6'8" and has good size and able to shoot the ball, and has been heaven sent, been able to step in as in Brandon Ingram's absence and been able to provide some points and some scoring. Herb Jones, of course, we know his defense has stood out over the last, especially over last year, and you hear about his story, and I really like where he's coming from as a basketball player and him being humble, but he's able to shoot the ball now a little bit too. So he's that 3-and-D guy that they can depend on when Zion kicks it out, CJ kicks it out, Brandon Ingram kicks it out, whatever the case may be, he can be on the court at all times because he's able to spread the floor. Jose Alvarado being an irritant, providing that energy night to night, being a defensive pest, being able to score as well, nearly 10 points a game. That's just, you just look at how dynamic this team is and how scary this team is. And kudos to Willie Green to get all these guys to mesh together and play big time. And people question the hiring of him, and he's been able to show that he can coach in this league and be a factor on that end. But just to get these guys to play like this, and especially buy-in on the defensive end, which I thought wouldn't happen with guys like Brandon Ingram in terms of CJ McCollum and Zion Williamson. You don't think of those guys as defenders. But to see them turn it around here and basically control both sides of the floor, basically with the offensive prowess of Zion Williamson and on the defensive end, basically creating havoc, with being second in steals with 8.9 assists per game. And that's where you see all those highlights and those transition buckets for them. That ability saves that ability on that defensive end to create easy buckets is dividends for this team, and especially when they get to the second and free throws made in attempts, they're able to control both sides of the floor, being able to control havoc on both sides of the floor, putting teams in foul trouble, getting to the line, being efficient there, but also getting in transition, scoring easy buckets for this team. That seems what it is, especially with Zion scoring it inside, Valanciunas able to score inside and out. They have multiple ways to beat you, and it's just a question of what this team can do once fully healthy, and seeing what they can do against the West. They're going to put pressure on anybody, especially the way they score the ball, the dynamic of the team, and CJ McCollum being a veteran leader on this team. I think that's going to pay dividends for them. And it's going to be very interesting to see how the Pelicans go about going into the playoffs. I know it's early on in the season, but you're always just looking ahead, and this team is basically built for the playoffs. And people have questioned what can they do in the pick and roll defensively with Zion. Teams are going to attack him. But so far, they've been able to hold up and be one of the top defensive teams in the league. And it's going to be interesting to see how they go going forward. The thing that I think this team needs, probably just a little bit of seasoning. A lot of those guys haven't had big time experience. They had the play-in game last year against they made the playoffs. They just lost them 6. But just in general, I think they just need a little bit more seasoning there. Zion wasn't there, to be in the playoffs. So that's going to be interesting to see if he's going to be healthy over the course of the season and be able to be a factor in the playoffs when the time comes. But the New Orleans Pelicans, one of the surprise teams of the league, I thought they were going to be maybe middle of the pack, lower in the playoff season, maybe potential play-in team. But to see them come out and play this way has been impressive on the season, and especially led by Zion right now. He's playing great, should be in the MVP conversation as well as he's playing. So we'll see how that goes for them in the New Orleans Pelicans in the second quarter of the season, right into All-Star break, and see if they can maintain this consistency, get Brandon Ingram back, and continue to build on this great season that they're having so far.